Good evening. Brian Williams is on assignment tonight. We begin with a scandal that has been building and the outrage that has been growing over the deplorable conditions some wounded soldiers have endured at the Army's top hospital. Tonight, the Army's top civilian officer is out. Army Secretary Francis Harvey was fired today, a direct result of the problems at the hospital and the outcry over the Pentagon's response. NBC's Jim Miklaszewski is at the Pentagon with the very latest. Jim, good evening.
Good evening, Campbell. From the very day this scandal broke, Defense Secretary Robert Gates has been demanding accountability, and today he got it. Secretary Gates himself made the announcement at the Pentagon.
Earlier today, Secretary of the Army, Dr. Fran Harvey, offered his resignation. I have accepted his resignation.
But Pentagon officials tell NBC News Harvey was forced to resign over the way the Army has mishandled the scandal from the beginning.
I am disappointed that some in the Army have not adequately appreciated the seriousness of the situation pertaining to outpatient care at Walter Reed. Some have shown too much defensiveness and have not shown enough focus on digging into and addressing the problems.
The story, first reported in the Washington Post by Dana Priest and Ann Hull, and first aired on NBC's Nightly News, uncovered shocking conditions at Walter Reed's Building 18, an outpatient facility where wounded soldiers lived in rat and roach-infested rooms and mold covered the walls. Yesterday, Major General George Waitman was relieved of command at Walter Reed, and the hospital's former commander, Lieutenant General Kevin Kiley, put back in as a temporary replacement. But Pentagon officials say Secretary Gates saw Kiley as part of the problem. Gates reportedly felt the Army's decision to put Kiley back in charge showed a lack of judgment, and that led to today's firing of Secretary Harvey. But Army veteran Democratic Senator Jack Reed said today the bigger problem is that the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have produced so many wounded soldiers. Walter Reed was simply overwhelmed.
We're assessing responsibility. Now we've got to fix the problem. And the problem is more resources in terms of personnel for Walter Reed.
And late today, the Pentagon announced that Lieutenant General Kiley will not get the job at Walter Reed. That will go instead to Major General Eric Schoomaker, who's the brother of the Army Chief of Staff. Meanwhile, Pentagon officials are predicting that still more heads will roll. Campbell?
And Jim, what about that problem that Senator Reed mentioned, that the hospitals are just overwhelmed?
Well, tens of thousands of soldiers and Marines have been wounded in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Many of them are going to require treatment the rest of their lives. The big question is, who's going to pay that bill long after the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are over?
All right, Jim Miklaszewski for us from the Pentagon tonight. Jim, thanks. We're back now with NBC News In Depth, and the final report in our series from Chief Science Correspondent Robert Bazell, who has had extraordinary access to the brave American medical teams that work so hard to save the lives of those wounded in Iraq. All week long, Bob has shown us not only their heroism, but their discipline as well. But what about the toll their work takes on these heroic doctors and nurses who've seen things that many never imagined? Well, tonight, Bob joins them upstairs.
Hey, Jamil.
Take a break.
All right. The birthday boy.
On the roof of the Baghdad Combat Hospital during a quiet evening. The medical team comes to unwind.
Your stress test is tomorrow. I'll do your colonoscopy on Saturday.
With no alcohol in the war zone, cigars are a big part of the social ritual.
So a little slice of heaven.
It is a moment to escape all the trauma they treat every day. Back home in Virginia, Daryl Pugh is a general surgeon.
We never saw anything like this when we were training back in the States. And there have been a couple of times where I had to step back and think, how am I going to deal with this?
Oh, welcome to our world, folks.
The seasoned staff is a mix of active military, reservists, and National Guard. Still, the severity of the casualties test even a 20-year veteran Army nurse like Colonel Sharon Williams.
What inner resources do you draw on to be able to continue to do it?
Inner resource, probably just spirituality, prayer, a lot of prayer, a lot of friends, close friends. And, here, this is my family here now, so we kind of draw on each other. I just know that I'll never forget this for the rest of my life.
You might remember this one.
Music is one way Dr. James McLean from Honolulu unwinds. When he's working, he thinks a lot about reuniting the wounded with their families.
If I just get somebody home long enough for their family to say goodbye so they can see him again, it's worth it. It's worth every bit of it.
Inevitably, there are a few who don't even live that long. Medic William Wilson from Tupelo, Mississippi.
It's a part of your family that dies. It's not just a fellow soldier. And this is your brother, your uncle, your cousin. These are people you eat, live with every day.
We weren't allowed to photograph it, but every time an American service person killed in action is transported out of here on a helicopter, the entire hospital staff lines up to show its respect. It's called an angel flight.
After so many injuries and a lot of angel flights, the staff, which rotates through for 6 months or a year, starts to think of home.
When I leave the Army, I'm going to find a small children's hospital that does not do trauma. I promise you that. If I never do trauma again after this, it won't bother me in the least bit.
But while they are there, they do their jobs with dedication and compassion. Robert Bazell, NBC News, Baghdad.